Good evening. My name is Anahita Fala, Hearing Officer for San Francisco Public Works. Cerise Waiters is the clerk of this hearing. This hearing is being recorded via Zoom and will be available afterward through a link on the San Francisco Public Works website, sfpublicworks.org. As this is a virtual hearing, there is no sign-in sheet. So if you would like to receive information about the results of this hearing, please send an email to the email address listed on the hearing notice, which is urbanforestry@sfdpw.org. If you would like to be on the contact list, please type and send your email address in the chat or send an email to urbanforestry@sfdpw.org. This public hearing is being held to consider 4 items regarding tree removals under Public Works jurisdiction. We intend to go through the items in the order posted on the website and being shared on the screen. My job as the hearing officer is to gather the facts for the hearing item, listen to your testimonies, and help our Director of Public Works make determinations. I will not be making any decisions today. Instead, I will forward the findings from this hearing and make my recommendations to the director. The director will make the final determinations. When the director's determinations are made, the department will notify you of them if you have provided your contact information. The hearing will proceed as follows for the 4 cases. I will first ask Public Works staff to speak first and present the case. Then I will allow the property owner or appellant or applicant to speak. Then any member of the public or witness who wants to speak. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes to speak. The clerk will monitor the time for all speakers and will indicate when the speaker has 30 seconds left. If you're a party to this proceeding, I will call on you to speak. If you would like to use visual materials in your presentation, please let me know before you speak. You will then have the standard 3 minutes to provide your comments. If you're a member of the public or witness who wants to speak, wait for me to call for public comments, then use Zoom's raise your hand feature if you're on a computer to put yourself in the queue to speak. If you are on your phone, dial *9 to indicate you're raising your hand. When it is your turn to speak, I will recognize you. If on your phone and you're muted, press *6 to unmute yourself. If you would like to use visual materials in your presentation, please let me know before you speak. You will then have the standard 3 minutes to provide your comments. Comments and questions should be addressed to me and not to the department or applicant. If you cannot finish your comment in the allotted time, you may submit written testimony to me by the end of this hearing. If I feel a question is warranted, I will ask the question. After all comments are completed, I will close the item. We will now begin the hearing. It is order number 203982 for 95 Ora Way. This is to consider the removal of 1 significant tree on private property with replacement. The staff denied the removal and the applicant has appealed. May I have Public Works make its presentation?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Steve.
Cool. Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Steve Keller. I will be representing Public Works and the Bureau of Urban Forestry. And you guys can see my screen as well.
Yes.
Cool. Great. Okay. The first case is regarding the removal of 1 significant tree on private property with replacement. Originally, the Bureau of Urban Forestry denied a removal permit and the applicant has appealed. Here are some photos of the tree. The photo on the left is from November 2019. That is when we denied the removal permit. The photo on the right is the same tree from about a week and a half ago. The permit was originally denied because we thought the tree was in fair condition and that we thought it had some good years left, and we did not believe it to be significantly hazardous. On the right, you can see the tree has declined slightly from about 1 year ago. The canopy is sparser. There's a more browning of the canopy. In comparison, the picture on the left is what a healthy Monterey pine should look like. So it is clearly not in the best condition. It's likely infected with a common disease called pitch pine canker that causes the branch tips to brown and die out. And I believe the HOA's arborist has done a lot of pruning on this tree to remove some dead branches, so maybe it looks better than it could. Here are some more pictures of the tree that show a lot of the canopy is one-sided. So depending on what angle you look at the tree from, it can look decent to in fairly bad condition. Another significant change from when we originally denied the permit was the presence of bark beetles. When we inspected the tree in 2019, we did not see any signs of bark beetles attacking the tree. But when we looked at the tree in December of 2020, we did find evidence that the tree had been infected with bark beetles. Typically, once a tree is in declining condition, bark beetles are one of the kind of the final things that will attack its health and cause it to really kind of go into a death spiral. So, kind of in conclusion, the tree is not improving. It's in worse condition than when we originally denied the permit. And given the presence of bark beetles, it's unlikely that the tree will be alive in 3 to 5 years. It's probably just a short matter of time before it declines more and is likely to die. That is it for the Bureau of Urban Forestry.
Thank you. I believe we have the applicant or owner for this who would like to speak. Oh, I believe it's Patrick.
Hi, Patrick. I just promoted you to panelist. You can go ahead and speak. Did you have something to share?
Patrick is still on.
Okay. Sorry. Hi, I'm Patrick Carroll. I am on the board of directors of the Gold Mine Hill Homeowners Association, which is the owner of this tree. And I just want to say that we take our trees very seriously here at Gold Mine Hill. We love our trees. We spend in the 5 figures to feed the trees and spray them for bark beetles and such. So this tree, despite our efforts, has continued to decline, and it's gotten to the point where we're seriously concerned that it's going to drop a limb and injure a homeowner. I saw after a windstorm, a Monterey pine lost a small branch and it caved in the cab of a pickup truck. I would hate for that to happen to someone's head if they happen to be walking by this tree. So I'm asking the board to please grant our request to remove this beloved tree, which sadly has reached the end of its life and is now desperately in need of removal. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. It looks like Stephen Howard has his raised hand.
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Stephen.
Hi. Yeah, this is Stephen Howard with Davy Tree in San Francisco. We've been taking care of the trees for, I don't even know how long. I've been with the company for about 10 years and I've been on the property throughout that time. So yeah, we have been treating for bark beetles and pine pitch canker. There wasn't really a problem with bark beetles up until maybe, 2 or 3 years ago, where some of the older, more mature ones, despite the treatment, the chemical wasn't penetrating enough because the bark was so thick. So some of the older ones got taken out. The rest are kind of sustaining. But yeah, I applied for removal for that particular tree at 95 and the one across the street at 80 on the same day. About a month later, the other tree started to fail. So we took that one out. In the meantime, there's been another pine that's on a hillside that almost failed. We caught that one before it hit the building. So not that it's necessarily relevant to this particular tree, but there is also a track record of the mature pines, when they become weak, possibly failing. So this tree at 80, we've taken significant deadwood off over the last 2 years. So 2-inch diameter and greater. We haven't really even gone after the smaller deadwood, which has just been accumulating. But yeah, we've taken a lot of declining deadwood off that tree, and the crew tells me that even the live growth feels kind of weak, kind of brittle. So it's definitely dying. It's not going to last much longer, and the sooner we can take it out and put a new tree in to establish, I think the better off the property and the public will be.
Thank you. It looks like Josh has his hand raised. Hi, Josh.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thanks. Yeah, the issues pointed out by Steve at Buff and the arborist, I guess also named Steve. I know that those are pretty common for this species. Taking down any tree, especially one of this size, it's still a loss for the city and the people and the ecology who live here and need trees as part of our integrated environment. So what I'd like to ask, I guess, both the Bureau and the applicant in terms of replacement is that as a member of the public, I would just like to ask that the replacement tree not be something ornamental or small or even medium statured. We have very few places in the city where we can plant large statured and carbon sequestering trees. So my request would just be to the department and to the applicant and the homeowners association, I would respectfully request consideration of a replacement that has an equivalence in terms of the environmental benefits that the outgoing tree has provided us. Thank you.
Thank you. It looks like the next person who has their hand raised is MIGPPEC5.
Hi, I'm sorry, this is my work account I'm calling in on. My name is Joan Chaplick. I live at 60 Ora Way. I'm right across the street from this. And I want to echo what Patrick Carroll said. I'm on the landscape committee. We do take our trees very seriously. We invest in them. We work with the expert opinion of Davy Tree. We're up on a ridge and we have our own microclimate with tremendous wind. And this tree, I can see it right out the window and it continues to decline. And we did have a tree come down earlier in the year, very unexpectedly. And luckily it was stopped by another tree. Otherwise it probably would have taken out one of the buildings. And I'm sure the Davy Tree folks could explain and give you history on that if you were to ask them. But we're just concerned about safety and also getting another tree in the works. The pines are unfortunately at the end of their lifespan, and we're really doing our best to keep them healthy and well. But when they start to decline, when the beetle treatments don't aren't, you know, proving to be effective, you know, we have branches, and hopefully we won't have someone harmed or any of the buildings harmed, because, you know, during a bad storm, this sick, weakened tree gets taken out. And I agree with, you know, replacing with significant trees. They do take time to grow, but I would appreciate if the city would reconsider their decision and approve our request to remove this tree. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. It looks like we have Jim Ross with his raised hand. Hi, Jim. If you want to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great. My name is Jim Ross. I've been here on the Hill for about 24, 25 years. I started by being chairman of the landscape committee here for 6.5 years, during which time we dealt with all sorts of problems, including the pitch canker disease that ravaged so many trees here in the city during that particular period. I just want everyone to know here, the city, that one of the nicest things about this complex is the beautiful courtyard, the surrounding trees, the bushes, the flowers. It's what draws people here to buy. It's really, really pretty. And we've done everything, we do everything that we can to actually maintain our trees, fertilization, extra food, all sorts of things, monitoring by Davy Tree. We do everything we can to keep our trees intact without losing them. So I just want to say that our hearts are in the right place. The problem here with this tree is that in looking at it, and I just looked at it a couple nights ago, it's a huge tree. It's a big tree, and it's tilting. It's really, really gonna fall. There's no question in my mind, having looked at trees for a long time here. And we do get some really, really stiff breezes and wind gusts up here off the west, especially from the ocean. And this tree is right in line with all of those breezes. I just want to say that this tree will fall. I'm telling you, it's going to fall, and it's going to fall one of three ways. It's either going to fall to the right and take out a couple of buildings there, the EF buildings in our complex. It's going to fall to the left and take out a carport, or it's going to fall towards the west, directly across the street, and take out a building that sits there. So it does present a pretty concrete picture in my mind. And again, I'm seasoned. I've been around this complex as chairman years ago, as you know, looking at these different kinds of problems, whether it's roots, whether it's bark beetle, whether it's pitch canker, whether it's tilting, whether it's got you know, any life left to it. Now, this tree is dying and it's tilting. And I think that's the main thing you need to hear from me. It truly is tilting, and it's not going to take too much more to have it go sideways or frontwise or whatever, and take out either buildings with people in them or a carport with lots of cars, and it's going to do damage. So my suggestion here, kindly put to the city, is let's get rid of this thing before it does harm and before it does damage. It's going to, if it's allowed. And then this complex is noted for putting some very nice replacement trees in the place of those that we do take down.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. That's your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. It looks like we have another raised hand from Liane. Hi, Liane. You would just need to unmute yourself, I believe, if you would like to speak. It seems like we're waiting for Liane to unmute.
Sorry.
Oh, okay, there you are. Hi there.
Haven't used Zoom on this phone before. Anyway, yes, my name is Liane Molyneaux, and I've lived at Gold Mine for over 30 years. One thing that I wanted to add is that climate change is definitely affecting our trees more in the past 10 years than I've ever seen. We get less fog, our winds are stronger, and of course we get less rain. So I think that's also helping accelerate the end of the life of our trees. And I just wanted to add that climate change angle to it.
Thank you, Liane. I'm not seeing any more hands raised. So I'm going to close with saying if there are no more comments for this item, I will now close this item and make my recommendations to the director. So we're going to be moving on to the second item, which is order number 203983. And this is for the 16th Street Improvement Project Phase 2. And this is to consider the removal of 18th Street trees. All the trees will be replaced unless specified. And there are 100 trees total, which will be planted between Church and Utah Street. The staff has approved the removals and the public has protested. So I'll quickly read through these specific trees. There are 5 trees at 2400 to 2440 16th Street, 1 at 2757 16th Street, 1 at 2765 16th Street, 1 at 2800 16th Street, 1 at 2940 16th Street, which says no replacement, 1 at 3020 16th Street, 1 at 3027 16th Street, 1 at 3120 16th Street, 1 at 3159 16th Street, 1 at 3174 16th Street, 2 at 3214 16th Street, 1 at 3233 16th Street, 1 at 3245 16th Street. So I will turn it to Steve of Public Works to please make its presentation.
Okay, hello. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So the 16th Street Improvement Project is a SF-MTA project that is mostly a transportation and safety project. So a lot of upgrades in the right of way. And then in addition to the transportation improvements, there was funding to remove trees that Public Works thought were good proposals for removal. And in addition to that, there was going to be a lot of tree planting as well. But then as I was, there's been a slight change because as I was preparing for this hearing literally last week, the SF to MTA had informed us, this was on Friday, that due to budget cuts, that they will be reducing the budget and the scope of this project by 50%. So there's going to unfortunately be some changes to mostly to well, there'll be changes in the budget to what trees will be removed and to the number of trees that will likely be in the budget for replanting. But regardless of the MTA's project budget, the Bureau of Urban Forestry will still likely pursue the removal of the trees included in the hearing. And at a minimum, the trees will be replaced at just at a 1-to-1 ratio per the Public Works Code. But as was originally stated, about 100 trees being planted, that is unknown at this point and possibly unlikely just due to the funding reduction that this NTA project is unfortunately going to be dealt with. Just a short timeline of this project. In 2017, the Bureau of Urban Forestry and other landscape architects walked the project corridor and identified trees to be removed. In March 2019, 36 trees were posted with removal notices. Between summer and fall of 2020, the Bureau of Urban Forestry reevaluated some of the proposed removals. And currently, only 18 of those 36 trees are still proposed removals and being discussed at the hearing tonight. Half the trees being proposed for removal are Ficus microcarpa. The city, over the past couple of years, the city has lessened or basically increased the reasons of why ficus trees are being approved for removal. The city generally views them as being hazardous, and they tend to drop very large branches and damage cars and have major disruptions to infrastructure and are a risk to injuring people. And the reasons ficus trees are considered for removal is we take into account competing and codominant stems with acute angles of attachment, the tree's failure history, the live crown ratio, canopy vigor, large limbs that are damaged by vehicles, the tree's pruning history, canopy balance, how large they are, and if they have utility conflicts. The first trees that were approved for removal are 5 locust trees that are in poor condition at 2400 to 2440 16th Street. Here's a picture of tree number 1. You can see that all the bark has been, a significant amount of bark has been split off the tree, and the canopy is in poor condition. It's just a really good candidate for it to be removed. Tree 2 was actually not in as bad a condition as we thought when we originally posted it for removal, and we actually think this tree should probably stay. Tree 3 is also a black locust. A pretty sparse canopy and a large trunk wound. Generally, once this species of tree starts to decline, they rarely recover. Tree 3 is dead. Sorry, tree 4 is dead. And then here we have tree 5. You can see the picture on the right. The main trunk suffered a large, basically the main trunk failed. And the only thing remaining is a large scaffold branch that is also decaying, and it is very likely that that will fail as well. Moving on to 2757 16th Street. It's a large ficus microcarpa with poor structure. When the main scaffold branches are large compared to the main trunk, it generally increases the chances of a catastrophic branch failure. And in addition, the tree is constantly pruned down from the PG&E high voltage wires, which causes it to grow out horizontally. And we believe it's a matter of time before this tree would possibly lose a large branch. Here at 2765 16th Street, tree number 2, it's a small ficus tree, but it's directly on top of a sewer line. And as this tree grows larger, due to its poor branching structure, we think it would also be a failure, have a significant chance of failure. This is a Australian willow tree at 2800 16th Street. When we originally inspected this tree, we saw a large crack developing in the main trunk, which would have necessitated the removal of about half the canopy. We couldn't get good photos of this tree because it's currently inside a construction project of a large development. So once the tree protection is removed and we can access the site, we will be better able to evaluate this tree and see how the canopy is doing and see how the crack is developing. If there's any chance we think the tree can safely remain, we'll have it remain. But we still need to get some better eyes on the actual structure. Here we have one New Zealand Christmas tree at 2940 16th Street. This tree essentially has no structure. It's essentially just a straight trunk with a bunch of small branches coming off of it. If you look in the upper right-hand corner, you can see how this tree used to be overshadowed by a very large ficus tree, and it is still routinely topped to keep it out of a traffic signal. This is the one tree on the project that we would not do a direct replacement with because it is too close to an intersection. And also, this is a site where we've recently planted some new trees. We removed two very large ficus approximately 2 years ago, and then we recently planted 4 new trees at the site. Here's a tree at 3020 16th Street. It's a Pittosporum undulatum. It has lots of decay in the main trunk and 2 scaffold branches. It's really a matter of time before this tree dies, or one of the large branches breaks off. Here's a Chinese elm at 3027 16th Street. It's infected with Chinese elm anthracnose canker. It's a disease that eats the outer cambium and kind of decays the tree from the outside in. And again, it's a matter of time before the decay reaches a point where the trunk could crack in half. Here's a very large ficus microcarpa at 3120 16th Street. It's probably the largest tree in the corridor. It has very large limbs overhanging the muni wires. It has the main trunk is damaged from delivery trucks. So that's one of the biggest causes of large ficus failures is delivery trucks driving into trees, and then the entire tree will collapse. And there's also poor structure at the main branch union where you have 3 large limbs all originating from the same spot. So it's a tree that exhibits structure of what we see when we see large ficus fail. Here's another ficus at 3159 16th Street. The trunk clearly exhibits an extreme lean to the west, and then right where the trunk does make the odd lean, there's an old wound there. So we think that at that point of the wound, the wood is under a lot of stress. So this is a tree that we think has a high likelihood of failure that we would like to remove. 3174 16th Street. Medium-sized ficus has been kept in check due to semi-annual pruning by the property owner. I believe the project intends to keep this streetlight here, and the tree is enveloping the muni line, muni support wires, and the streetlight. So it's one of the main reasons this tree is being proposed for removal is to get access to the streetlight. There are 2 small ficus at 3214 16th Street. If you look at about 10 feet, these trees were cut back to essentially a stump, maybe 5 to 10 years ago, and the resulting structure is many poorly attached upper canopy branches. And over time, as these trees grow larger, those branches will be points of failure. And we felt it was better off replacing these trees now than letting them to grow larger. A large ficus at 3233 16th Street. Again, it has 3 very large scaffold branches, all originating from the main branch union. When scaffold branches all have a similar diameter to that of the trunk, that's a characteristic that we find in trees that fail. So again, it's a very large ficus that's being pruned from the top down due to the utility wires and causing it to grow out. And then over time, we think it does pose a high risk of a catastrophic branch failure. The same goes for the tree at 3233 16th Street, another large ficus with very poor branching structure. It has a large wound from a past failure, and the main branching union, you can see how there's very large branches almost the same size as the main trunk with very poor and narrow angles of attachment. And we think this tree is one of the ones that poses the highest likelihood of failure along this area of 16th Street. The planned replacement species for this area of 16th Street is Jacaranda mimicifolia, which generally reaches a mature height of 25 to 30 feet in San Francisco. And then Magnolia grandiflora Sam Summers usually has a mature height close to 35 feet. We would try to plant the Sam Summers variety as much as possible, or when there's very low utility lines, we would likely plant Magnolia grandiflora, the Little Jim variety, which generally has a mature height of about 20 feet. Again, since the original removal notification in March 2019, the Bureau of Urban Forestry has walked the project corridor on 4 separate occasions and reevaluated the proposed removals. Taking into consideration public safety, community input, and canopy preservation, the following trees are no longer being considered for removal. This is a site I referenced earlier. The 2 trees circled in yellow were originally proposed for removal, but now they're not. This is at 2757 and 2765 16th Street. There's a ficus tree at 3122 16th Street that the Bureau of Urban Forestry is no longer pursuing removal. We thought if we were to retain this tree, it would help offset the large loss of canopy from the very large ficus at 3120 16th Street. There's a row of 6 small to medium-sized ficus at 3111 to 3119 16th Street. All of these trees are going to remain. There's 2 large ficus at 3200 16th Street. We've chosen to retain these trees as well. And then there's 3 trees from 3 ficus trees from 3260 to 3290 16th Street. And these ficus will remain as well. And then at 3265 16th Street, the ficus tree on the right will remain. The one on the left had been previously proposed for removal, but it fell over in a winter storm, so it's no longer there. That is it for the Bureau of Urban Forestry. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Now I will open it for the public to provide any comments. So please raise your hand by using the raise hand button on Zoom, or reminder if you're on a phone, it's *9 to raise your hand. It looks like we have Josh who has raised his hand and would like to speak.
Oh, whoops. Okay.
Oh, I can hear you.
Okay, great. Thanks. All right, interesting. I appreciate, Steve, you're bringing up the update here. So I guess my position, what I was going to say is different, but so here we go. So what I'm going to say is that if any tree is in good condition, then it shouldn't be removed, especially with these revelations regarding SFMTA's inability to keep its promises regarding phase 2 of the 16th Street BRT. Regarding replacement, I'm a little unclear how this number could be halved as a matter of budget alone. Because first, the original number of 100 had to come from somewhere. It's not a number that can be just picked out of the air. It requires a review of existing and potential basins to determine their viability. So I am presuming that the 100 number came from that determination. And secondly, as the department knows, tree planting requirements are triggered by construction as a matter of law. Departments don't just pick a number. They have to follow the rules that everybody else has to follow when there's construction involved. So I would hope that our own department would be following, the SFMTA would be following the city law on that. Third, I just want to make a note about replacement and protection. I would like to ask that the decision mention something about tree protection at and there's a reason. At the completion of phase 1, there were 4 trees freshly planted by SFMTA within 2 blocks of one another that were either vandalized by being cut in half completely, or they were just torn out of the ground and left in the gutter. And it took another month or maybe 2, I don't recall, to replace those. And they were replaced with much smaller trees. So if we're going to be planting fewer trees, the least we can do is make sure that we don't have to replace them, because we probably don't have the money to replace them. And regarding jacarandas, those are notoriously spindly when they're first planted. And if anyone is looking for examples of what I'm talking about, you can take a look at the jacarandas that were planted at 16th and Harrison when those ficus came down as examples. And those trees have really struggled for lack of adequate protection, and have repeatedly had their stakes pulled out or their arborties cut, and they've fallen over, and they've required repeat maintenance. And if we're looking at an agency that's already cutting their budget on that, then this is going to be a problem. And finally, it's just tough as a citizen to know that this is a city initiated removal and replacement. We have a city urban forest plan that, despite the fact it was put into action in 2014, we have yet to follow. So I hope that in this project, in phase 2 of the 16th Street BRT, the least the SFMTA can do with this is follow the city laws and follow the city's urban forest plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. It looks like we have John Nulty with his hand raised. Hi, John.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. First, there were, like in Steve's presentation, there were 38 trees that were proposed to be removed. And so I assume the number, because at the time when they were posted, those 38 trees, it was 3 to 1, the ratio that the SFMTA said that they were going to replace all those trees. So I would assume then if the budget has been cut by 50%, that we would then have replacement trees of 50 trees. Second, the 18 trees that are not now being removed, which are some of our ficus, that they would be trimmed. I didn't hear anything about possibly those trees that were originally posted back 2 years ago, that they would be trimmed as part of the Bureau of Urban Forestry's plan of trimming ficus trees. Next would be, I would appreciate that large box size trees be placed in the removal of the trees, the 18 that are being removed, and that also during the posting period, the tree at 2800 16th Street, no posting on it, even though they say there was construction. There was also no posting on the corner, either corner of the where that tree is located. So the public and also the whole block, because it's under construction, didn't know that that tree was being removed. So that is a error on the DPW's, whoever posted those signs for the tree removals on 16th Street. Thank you.
Thank you, John. We have Parent who has their hand raised. Hi, Parent. Sorry if I mispronounced your name.
No, that's great. Good evening, everyone. I am actually the project manager for 16th Street Improvement Project. I am with SFMTA, and I wanted to make a couple of clarifications. I wanted to thank Steve for his presentation, and I wanted to give DPW and Buff kudos for their effort. I don't know if anyone on the on this call remembers, originally for the phase 2 of the project, there was 51 trees that were proposed for removal. And however, Urban Forestry took it on themselves to go and reevaluate all of these trees over and over multiple times for the past year. to reduce this number as much as possible and preserve as many of the trees as possible. Which as a result, now they're only recommending 17 removals, not 51, which I think is great for all of us, including the community. Second, I wanted to mention something about the project, and I believe there was a mention of if we're doing construction and we should follow the codes. We are following the codes, and none of the tree removals are triggered by construction. So our construction and our improvements does not at all trigger a single tree removal. All the tree removals are per urban forestry recommendations, and originally when the agency had money, we volunteered as a favor to pay for this on their behalf. And now, unfortunately, that our agency is short on funding on all of our projects, we no longer can offer favors at this moment. And therefore, we may not be able to pay for any removal or replacement at this point, again, since they're not triggered by the construction at all. However, as Steve said, urban forestry still would like to move forward with the removal of these trees and replacement of 1-to-1 ratio as is required by city code. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any raised hands, but I think Cerise reminded people in the chat that if you did type something, yeah, feel free to raise your hand. It looks like we have a hand raised. It looks like it's the number ending in 925. Please press *6 to unmute yourself.
Hi.
Hi there.
This is Rob Geller, and I live right between the two trees at 3233 and 3245 that you're planning to remove. These trees are fantastic trees, a big part of the neighborhood. They provide great habitat for any number of birds. We live up here, and there is a lot of wildlife back here. They're real buffers to the 16th Street is a very busy street with car exhaust and such, and a lot of noise. They're a really nice buffer for that. They're just beautiful parts of our neighborhood, and it's really a shame that you can't just find some way to prune them in a responsible way as opposed to just pulling them out, because you were never going to have anything as majestic for many, many more years. And I don't even think that what you're planting is going to achieve the kind of canopy, the great oxygen that we get from the trees. There are so many benefits that I really feel that the city should have been a lot more responsible. I feel that their policy at a point, I think it was for budget reasons, they devolved the cutting of the trees and the care of the trees back to the homeowners who didn't take care of them properly. So I believe that the problem with the trees really stems from those decisions that were made a long time ago. And I really wish there was some way to rectify that and find some way to prune those trees, especially these two particular trees that I love and that my family loves, and they provide us so much beauty, habitat, and oxygen and protection from the wires. You know, it was kind of surprising to hear that this all stemmed from an MTA decision. Are you pruning them because you want to clear the wires? With the advent of all the the 5G towers and antennas around, I just feel that it's the wrong decision to be cutting out such a huge tree and such a huge part of nature in our part of the city right here. So that's what I have to say, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Rob. So, any other comments? Oh, yes. I don't see any other comments, unless oh, I see Sofia has her hand raised. Hi, Sofia.
Hi there. I'm a college student. I've had some community members speak recently, and family members who are very concerned. I just wanted to bring up the point that a lot of improvements have been going on along in the Mission District along 16th Street. And I feel that this could potentially be viewed as an equity issue in terms of access to nature and just the type of wildlife that currently does thrive, especially with so many students and children in these neighborhoods stuck at home. They're not able to go to other neighborhoods, go leave the city, and really removing these trees in the near future, it could be very detrimental, especially those trees you mentioned, such as those that are not at risk and are not guaranteed to have problems in the future. I think also with mindfully selecting trees that are spatially apart from each other would be very beneficial. I noticed in your plan, a lot of the trees are very close together, and this could make entire patches where people do not have access to these trees, and there really isn't the type of wildlife that could exist should the trees be more, the removed trees be more spread out. And I would like you all to consider that. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. If there are no more comments for this item, I will go ahead and close this item and make my recommendations to the director. So the next item is order number 203989, and it's for 409 and 413 Vallejo Street. This is to consider the removal of 2 dead street trees without replacement. Staff approved the removal and the public has protested. May I have Public Works make its presentation, please?
Hello, Steve Keller, Bureau of Urban Forestry. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Cool. Okay, yeah, so this is the removal of 2 dead trees adjacent to 409 and 413 Vallejo Street. This is a picture of the dead Pittosporum undulatum or Victorian box tree adjacent to the most adjacent address is 409 Vallejo Street. It's actually and it's in the middle of a vegetated median. It's an evergreen species. The tree is obviously dead. There's some members of the public who, anyways, the tree was not posted with an emergency notice. It was posted with what we call a 15-day notice saying it's a hazard tree. Those are still allowed to be protested. A few members of the public tend to protest those trees. And then here's a picture of the dead tree at 413 Vallejo Street. Similarly, it's supposed to be an evergreen tree. It has no leaves. It's obviously dead. You know, definitely the pruning type definitely led to the death of the trees. This is not a species that likes to be. Whoever was doing the pruning kind of did a pollarding job over many years, and eventually the tree couldn't handle it anymore. I don't believe any fines were ever issued to any nearby residents. The trees have been pruned in this fashion for many years, and I also don't think we know who was doing the pruning. In terms of replacement, due to the trees being placed in a kind of thick and already vegetated median, the Bureau of Urban Forestry is not going to sponsor the replacement of the trees. It'd be very difficult to get a new tree planted in there and watered on a weekly basis by a Public Works crew member. We won't stop a nearby resident from applying for a removal permit and planting a tree and watering a tree, but it's unlikely that the Bureau of Urban Forestry would plant direct replacements in these same locations. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. If anybody in the public who would like to speak, please raise your hand now. We have Mike Madrid. Hi, Mike.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay.
Uh,
Hey, I just wanted to say I'm a resident on the street. I've been living here for 27 years, and I don't know why someone is protesting to stop dead trees being removed. All of the neighbors who are managing the garden, the planted parts of the garden at present, and have been doing for the last 30 years or so, would like to have the trees removed so that we could then move forward with re-landscaping those areas where the trees are and figure out a different way to repurpose those areas. Because we've been, as I said, we've been managing the planting on the hillside for several decades. So we don't know what the issue is with having them removed, because the trees have been dying for the last couple of years, and we'd prefer to move forward and have them removed, and then figure out a different way to use that space, as we have been doing with the rest of the garden, which all the neighborhood and people from around the city enjoy the garden and what we've done with the garden. So clearly we've proven that we know what to do with, we can re-landscape those areas. So I just want to say, from the neighbor's perspective, we would like to have those dead trees removed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. It looks like Josh has his hand raised. Hi, Josh.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Steve mentioned that the trees were pretty badly pruned, and typically that warrants a fine, but it's not always clear who was doing that. And it sounds like the last caller could explain who did that, since they know who's been managing it for the last many decades. So perhaps that's something that would warrant a fine. And the reason I mention a fine is not as a punitive reason, but because it is the fines that go directly back into the city's tree planting fund, which I suspect Steve could tell you, the tree planting budget has been, pun intended, but not funny, axed from Public Works budget. Then the last question I have, I suppose, or point of order, or some to pose, is that you could probably throw a stone and find a spot within that area where a tree could be planted, and why hasn't that been considered, or has it been considered? It sounds like, we've got two different addresses here, so this is probably covering some span of public right of way. Like I said, we're already thousands of trees behind on our urban forest plan that was put into action 6 years ago. So we should really not be doing business as usual when it comes to replacements. We need to be finding all kinds of ways and cooperating with one another as private citizens and as public departments and agencies to put in as many trees as we can right now. We cannot afford to just keep taking them out and not replacing them. Thanks.
Thank you, Josh. If there are no more comments for this item, I will now close the item and make my recommendations to the director. So we're going to go to the last item for tonight's hearing, and that is order number 203990. And this is about dead tree removal in Supervisor District 5. This is to consider the removal of 3 dead street trees with replacement at the following addresses. It's 2445 Pine Street, tree number 15, 1902 Bush Street, tree number 2, and 1991 Bush Street, tree number 1. Staff approved the removal and the public has protested. May I have Public Works please make its presentation?
Yes. Hello, Steve Keller, Bureau of Urban Forestry. As the hearing officer said, this is a very simple case of 3 dead trees that were protested by the public. There's a piece of our code where if a tree is not, imminently hazardous, as in, you know, falling over today, it can be posted with what's called a 15-day tree notice or a hazard tree notice, and those are protestable. So sometimes dead trees or trees that are almost dead got posted with these protestable notices. And there are a few members of the public who have been protesting a lot of this type of tree. So that's why we're here today. But here's a photo of 2445 Pine Street. It's a dead Lophostomen confertus. This site is, you know, is perfectly replaceable, and it could probably handle a large stature tree due to the lack of a building adjacent to it and a 9-foot sidewalk. Here's a photo of 1902 Bush Street, Pittosporum undulatum. This tree is dead. It's evergreen species. This tree clearly has no leaves. And the site can be replanted with same species, or our inspector said a southern magnolia could be a good choice. Here is another, is this the same tree? Sorry. Okay, and here's the third and final tree, 1991 Bush Street, tree number 1, is also a Pittosporum undulatum. Again, it's supposed to be an evergreen species. This tree clearly has 99% of the canopy gone. It's unfortunately a species of tree that we've seen a lot of mortality in the last 5 years. It used to be a very popular tree to plant, and now we tend to discourage residents from planting it. And again, this site can be replanted. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I will now open it to the public if they would like to raise their hand and provide a comment. We have Josh with his hand raised. Hi, Josh.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I just want to be really clear that I am not the guy who keeps objecting to dead tree removals. But I am the guy apparently who shows up, who bothers to show up at these hearings and try to provide some constructive input. Steve actually is the guy who taught me a lot about where trees can go and what size trees can be planted and all about infrastructure. So he may live to regret that, but I do appreciate the time that he took to teach me that. And all I want to say about this is I just want to thank Steve and thank Buff for prioritizing the replanting of large stature trees where those can be done, because there are so few places like that. I do appreciate that they're making that a priority and ensuring that is done where it can be done. Thanks.
Thank you, Josh. I'm not sure if there are any other public comments for this item. I don't see any hands raised. So if there are no more comments for this item, I will now close the item and make my recommendations to the director. So I am going to give, for anybody who arrived late and missed an item and hasn't spoken before, to speak again. So are there any public comments on any items on the agenda? If you have spoken, you will not be allowed to speak again. This is, again, for those who might have come late or didn't have a chance to speak. So one last call. If there are no more public comments, I am closing this hearing. The hearing is now closed. Thank you.
Thanks, Annie. Thanks, Josh.
Somebody raised their hand.
Oh, yeah, let them go.
Okay. Hi, Kev. It looks like you raised your hand right when I was closing the hearing, so.
I can hear you.
Oh. Okay.
Hello?
Hello? Hello,
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I would like to mention that I would like to save all the trees on 16th Street for 10 different reasons. One, we have global warming, and the trees provide valuable canopy. They provide shade, especially during the hot summer season, and they cool the air. They lower the hot temperature that's due to global warming, and they suck up stormwater. They clean up the air. They lower stress. They have a very calming influence on the people, especially like people going through crisis and change in their life. And there's a lot of those people on 16th Street, like in particular the homeless people, or I should say unhoused. And the trees help draw carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, and they put in oxygen, and they add beauty to the neighborhood, and they provide home for some wildlife like birds and stuff like that. And ultimately they increase property value. So please save the 18 trees on 16th Street. I think it's really important. I would, if they interfere with the muni cable lines, then just trim them, trim the branches, but do not cut the trees, because they have a right to life. They have a right to exist too. And I'm for the trees because they cannot speak for themselves. And my name is Vi Huynh, and I live in the Mission.
Thank you. So,
Miss Nguyen, could you please spell your name for the so that I can record it?
Okay, my first name is spelled V-I.
It's hard to hear you. Can you say it again, please?
My first name is spelled V as in victory, I as in intelligent.
Okay.
And my middle initial is P, like people. And my last name is Huynh. And the letter is H as in humble, U as in universal, Y as in yellow, N as in number, and H as in happy.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
thank you. So that was the last, I think, comment that we got for this hearing. So now I will officially close this hearing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks. All right. Have a nice night.
You too. Take care.